So as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, wow, there are a lot of common themes going through what we're talking about. And I guess the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that I am a recruiter, and that is an unusual position to have in most programs. So the people that you will typically be dealing with, if you call the main office number, are advisors who are so working with current students with their classwork, both undergrad and graduate students. They will usually hold open houses or information sessions. That's typically what my role is also in the school, but I specifically spend a lot of time on the road. I've just come back from being on the road for the last 2 months talking to hundreds and hundreds of students. So actually this kind of event is actually unusual for me because I'm used to being at a table and you're all coming to me at once. So bear with me on that. So, you know, we talked about doing your research, and it really is kind of important for you to think about what kind of professional you want to be, and talk to the people who are doing the jobs that you're doing. That, I think, is the first step. For me, that was kind of when my aha moment. I thought about the things that I really enjoyed doing, working with families and children. And then I thought about the kinds of things I might want to do in a profession in the long run. You want to check out, you know, basic things like the university's reputation, the program's reputation. Accreditation is important. I can say that, especially if you're thinking about going into a certain kind of practice, you want to make sure that the degree, which all of our degrees are accredited, are going to get you to where you need to go. But it's always really important, not only for looking at coursework here, but looking at programs outside the University of Washington. We talked about, Terry mentioned faculty members, and I want to say that contact the main office. If you want to talk to a faculty member, it's best to contact the main office first and ask what their process is. So for me at the School of Social Work, you can go to our website, you can find the faculty members' email addresses and what they're interested in, and you can shoot them an email asking a question. I was sitting here writing down do's and don'ts about when you're going through this process, and you don't want to be overly aggressive in any aspect of this. So if you send an email to a faculty member, remember that they are usually teaching and researching or are doing some professional practice, and it might take some time to get back to you, but more often than not, they will. Or the main office will make that connection, that introduction for you. Information sessions are very important to attend. Program forums, we have all kinds of orientations, open houses. Those are the best ways to make connections and get your questions answered. When you're doing your research, also you want to think about, we'll list things like class profiles, and I think the biggest thing, people get really panicky when they're applying for graduate school especially, and you look at the profiles and you see, you know, last year's class came in with a 3.5 GPA on average, or, you know, everyone has been working for 5 years in the field. I want you to keep in mind that those are averages, and so for our program, it can range, a GPA can range from a 2.8 to a 4.0, and we really are looking holistically at your application. We're looking at your essay, we're looking at how you've lived your life, basically. And by following the instructions, by making sure that you pick references that are from a variety of areas, that's going to give the admissions committee the best picture of you. So this is your time to shine. Like we talked about in the essay, think about all the great things that you've done. Everyone has a hiccup in their life. You heard everyone up here say, you know, how many different lives we've lived so far, and we're all very young. So, so don't let that intimidate you. The other thing is that if you're not 100% sure, go for it. You know, what's the worst that can happen is that it doesn't happen this time, but maybe it happens next time. In the last few years, we've had record numbers of applications, and so it is more competitive, but like I said, there isn't a cookie cutter applicant coming in. The things that I think are that we look at and what makes a great applicant are following the application instructions. They will not read past 4 pages or 5 pages. If we don't offer information, interviews, one-on-one interviews, then you just shouldn't ask for one. Don't send us cupcakes. At least until after you've gotten into the program, and then you can send us all the kinds of things you want. A thank you letter, it actually doesn't even always, isn't always necessary, but it's a nice thing. From my standpoint, it's a nice thing to get. I like to see those kind of things every once in a while. Financial aid. I know that a lot of people kind of have that aha moment after the financial aid deadline. So if you're considering going back to school next year, one of the biggest things I would say is make sure that you know what the financial aid deadlines are. And the deadline for the University of Washington is February 28th every year. So you go to FAFSA, the Federal Free Financial Aid website, and you do that. I usually make my daughter do it every Christmas. So that's part of her Christmas break. And then at least you know that if you make that decision, whether it's the UW or even a community college or one of the other universities in the state or out of state, that you've put that information in and you're going to be in the front of the line for financial aid. At the graduate school level, you may or may not know that it's a lot harder to get scholarships and grants. A lot of it is loans, but you want to make sure that you get that FAFSA in. So that's very important to do. You can go online and it takes about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to fill out. They'll ask you about your tax information, but you can guesstimate it. And when you've done it later in the year, if you're like me, you wait till April 15th, on April 16th, you can go back in and update that information. And if you're an alumni of the University of Washington, the Career Center offers assistance with writing your essay and preparing for your graduate school application. Also, like I said, it's very important to make contact with the programs that you're interested in, not only by attending the workshops that they have, but and ask them what do they have to offer. We do writing workshops to help prospective students prepare their applications. Like I said, the Career Center does things, so it's really important to check around the university. If not, I think that some of the libraries will, especially resume writing workshops, because those are going to be important. So that's another good thing. Some of the extra criteria that goes into looking at your applications, a lot of the programs now have a community service or professional experience component to that. So if you have not been, say if you're a social work applicant, if you've not been volunteering or doing it's paid or unpaid work, now would be the time to start investigating some avenues. And there's no right or wrong. So if you want to go back to nursing school and there is a component that you have to have some field experience, and say you want to work with elders, then I would look into volunteering with elders. That way, when you do get into school and you find out that, well, maybe that's not my best forte, you're more prepared for making the decisions on what kind of practitioner you want to be or professional you want to be.
Sonia, before we go to Kate, and just in the interest of time and keeping things moving forward, I did want to have you address a little bit about letters of recommendation, letters of reference, because I know that's a stumbling block for folks. Who do you ask? You've been out of school a long time. Do you ask job, professional peers, academic folks? If you could address that briefly, that would be great.
So letters of recommendation, like I said, the whole application is actually a big picture of who you are, how you live your life. So your essay is going to talk about one part of your life, your resume is going to show different parts of your life, and then the recommendations is a great way of showing another part of who you are. Typically, most schools are looking for 3 resumes, and what I will tell students is, say if their aha moments happen in the streets of downtown Seattle, if it's a social work student, but they also spent 2 years in the Peace Corps after they graduated, it would make a ton of sense to make sure that one of those references was someone from the Peace Corps who could talk about your experiences, your challenges, your successes, your leadership skills. If you've been volunteering at a place for a while, and I know you well, that would be another great person who can speak to your abilities. If you're, say, a business student and you've been working for a startup business for a while and you've helped lay the groundwork for that organization, that would be another person who could speak to your degree that you're seeking to do. So you want to make sure it's right in people. You definitely don't want to make sure that it's not your family members or your best friend, unless they've been your boss, I guess, for a while. You want to make sure that they're varied. If you're newly at a school, then an academic reference would also make sense, but it's not definitely necessary. Not every school requires a GRE, and so that means that you have to, in your writings and in your recommendations and stuff, the things that would typically be looked for in a test would be looked for through your application copy.